and valued her insight and her expertise. That's important too. It's all part and parcel of the performance culture concept. So what are the results of all this? The results are the bottom line. The bottom line is that in June of this year, we had fewer people drawing a paycheck in our office than we did in June of 2005 when I was in my first year. And yet, year after year, the legislature gives us more responsibilities, more duties to execute. We have more work. We're doing it with fewer people. Now, importantly in that picture is that not only has quality not suffered, but quality has improved. And we measure that, for example, by looking at a number of metrics and looking at client satisfaction. We measure client satisfaction every 18 months. And every 18 months since I've been Attorney General, our client satisfaction scores have gone up. And every year or so, the Department of Personnel, every couple of years, the Department of Personnel measures employee satisfaction in our agency. And every year they've measured it that I've been here, our employee satisfaction scores have gone up. In fact, they're the highest for any agency which is in the significant size category in state government. That's significant. We also use all kinds of other metrics. We use metrics that look at how fast we can resolve certain kinds of tort litigation. We call that early resolution. We've consistently exceeded the goals established for us by OFM. We look at our productivity in keeping sexually violent predators off the street and civilly confined until they're mentally well again, and our numbers have improved steadily there. We look at how many law enforcement agencies we assist through our homicide investigation tracking system, and our productivity there has gone up dramatically in the last few years. So we use metrics. We use the metrics to help us establish baselines when we do performance evaluations. We start by helping everyone set goals for the year, then we measure their progress against those goals. Managers go through a 360-degree review process, which means they're also reviewed by the clients and by the people they supervise. And of course, I review them, and I review them in part based on the quality of their evaluations of the people they work with. It's a system that works. It's a system that works because it's all about goal setting, about recognizing accomplishment, about rewarding accomplishment, about creating a performance culture. It's something that we ought to do in every agency of state government and isn't being done. Other than our office, there are about 5 other agencies, or 6, 7 total, all considerably smaller than us, small agencies that are doing this, but it really ought to be done in every agency. It's one of the best things you could do for the people you work with if you're the leader of an agency. And the thing is, it produces great results for the taxpayers of the state because we produce higher levels of value with fewer people, which means less money. Our budget is a little bit bigger than it was back in 2005, but over 4 biennia, it grew a total of 6% over 8 years. If you look at where we are today compared to where we were in the 2005-2007 biennium. That's progress, and it's something that needs to happen because our goal has to be to do everything we can to save money so that the state can focus on service delivery to the people in the state who really need it. And over 80% of the state budget is devoted to children and the elderly and the disabled. That's where most state resources go, right? It goes to education, it goes to DSHS, etc. So when we saved DSHS $8.5 million in legal service costs in the 09-11 budget as well, that was $8.5 million they could invest in protecting kids. It seems to me as state employees, as public servants, it's our obligation to do this. And our folks have stepped right up to it, as have people in many state agencies, including DSHS itself, who work very hard to find ways to save money to try to protect core services. I often say when I hear people criticize government employees generally or state employees specifically, and they complain about the cost of state government, I say, number one, yes, it is possible for us to become more efficient, and we're doing that. And I give the example of our office. But number two, state employees are not the problem when it comes to the budget and the budget crisis. State employees are, in fact, the answer. They are the solution. If they're well led and if they're treated with the respect and dignity and the empowerment philosophy that we bring, they can do even more. And that's why I'm really proud of our office, because we, I think, exemplify that. And that's why I enjoy all 3 roles that I have as a year Attorney General. As a lawyer, as a public policy leader, and as a leader of, I think, the finest Attorney General's office, the finest public law office in America. Thank you very, very much.
I think we have time for a couple questions.
Having gone through the Guyana workshop in Japan, I'm a real believer in that culture. Was it difficult getting acceptance and getting it incorporated?
The question was it difficult to get our office to accept performance or Kaizen and lean manufacturing? It really wasn't from the standpoint of any kind of built-in resistance. We basically just had to explain what it is and why it benefits everybody. And we're, everyone's carrying heavy caseloads these days. And boy, when you told the legal assistants, paralegals, lawyers, and investigators, hey, this is a process which will make your job easier, they stepped right up to it. Now, as we actually go through and implement the changes, that's where the rubber really hits the road. It's one thing to throw an idea on the table. It's another thing to live with the results. But so far, as we're several months into it, we're seeing a continued high level of enthusiasm. But I have to say, I think that wouldn't necessarily be as true if we hadn't, begun way back in '05 with this idea of continuous quality improvement. We didn't call it lean manufacturing, and basically early on we were just harvesting the low-hanging fruit, But I think that because they had seen us implement their ideas again and again, there was a higher level of acceptance than if we'd just thrown this at them without any kind of background like that.
Can you give us the status on the healthcare challenge?
Yes, there are 26 states now that are challenging the one feature of the Affordable Care Act, Section 1501, which is the individual health insurance mandate, which says that beginning in 2014, every American citizen will have to report to the Internal Revenue Service whether or not they have health insurance and whether that health insurance meets federal requirements. So you won't get to have any health insurance, you have to have what they tell you to have. The states believe that are involved in this suit, and there are 29 total, including others in the separate suits. The 29 states believe this is outside of the power of Congress. And so we went to a federal district court, and the judge invalidated the mandate. And now we're in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Atlanta. We had oral arguments in June. We expect a ruling this fall from that three-judge panel. And we expect to be in the U.S. Supreme Court by probably the 2012-2013 term of the court. So that's where it stands. That's really the issue. There's also an issue in the case about Medicaid, but this is the main issue is whether or not Congress has the power under the Constitution to order the American people to buy a private product in the commercial markets with their own money, which has never been attempted before, and something the courts really do need to weigh in on.
We have time for one more. Tom?
You made reference earlier to the law that should be established collective bargaining
Yes.
and outsourcing.
Yes.
Collective bargaining has certainly occurred. Outsourcing, not so much.
That's true. Tom, you're right. Very little of the competitive contracting has occurred. Unfortunately, a couple of governors in a row basically bargained it away. They said as part of the collective bargaining process, well, we won't actually do this unless you give us the okay. Well, not surprisingly, the leaders of the collective bargaining units haven't given it the okay. The legislature took the additional step in the 2011 session of passing the bill creating the new Consolidated Department of Executive Services, or Enterprise Services, I should say, Department of Enterprise Services, and actually specified, again, yes, we will use competitive contracting to sort out what we should be doing. And Tom, I think that's really important. If you look at the new DIS facility down here at 1500 Jefferson, that building is going to, among other things, house a server farm. And the initial pricing per gigabyte per month for storage, backup, and retrieval was $6 a gigabyte. They've now said, well, no, we can do it for $3 maybe. Well, I can go out in the private sector in the cloud and buy that for 27 cents per month per gigabyte. So I really think competition is key, and I'd like to see greater use of that. And I want to emphasize, Tom, in closing, that we're not talking about privatization here in the sense that privatization assumes the private sector can always do it better, faster, cheaper. That's simply not always the case. When you look at what competitive contracting has done for other jurisdictions, for example, Indianapolis, the city and county, which really pioneered this under Mayor Stephen Goldsmith, what you find is that a majority of the time, in fact, as much as 70% of the time or even 80% of the time, the government employees win the contract. But the average savings compared to the old system, the average savings across all of these contracts is 20%. And it's because the employees will tell you where they could save money if they were given more, say, freedom from certain regulations, if your Uncle Ed didn't have a patronage job anymore, not doing anything, that kind of thing. They'll tell you how to do it better, faster, cheaper. So I'm a real believer in that system. The legislature adopted it on a bipartisan basis in '04. We just have to actually do it. And never has there been a more crucial time in our history than to do it right now, because it can generate real savings for service delivery Most of the savings will be in administration and overhead. That's where we need to find them. Thank you very, very much.